Today on Welcome to Medicine, I'm meeting with Dr. Rob McCoy, who's a colonel in the Air Force, a commander who is leading by example. And today we're going to talk about how to be a good leader, what makes a good leader and a bad leader, and talk about some of his leadership advice for physicians who are coming into either a new position or further up in command, further up in strategic control. And I really appreciate being able to have that discussion with you today.
Thank you, Dr. Doolittle. It's my pleasure to be here.
What I'm most curious about today, though, is the leadership experiences that you've gained and the things that you want to pass on to young ER doctors, to physicians who are looking at leadership, and physicians that currently hold leadership positions. You have a wealth of experience. When did you know you were going to get into leadership?
Growing up and that kind of stuff didn't give very many leadership opportunities. When you're 6'1", 120 pounds, you're really not influencing people very well. But in joining the military with my college credit, I automatically started out as enlisted, or I was an E3. So that meant that E1s and E2s, I was above them. So my first unit that I got attached to, even in boot camp, I was one of the senior leaders of our company.
Wow.
So that was a lot of fumbling around and, number one, learning the military, and then kind of trying to learn how to be a leader and manage people and very, very difficult transition. But then when I came out of that, ended up being in charge of the medical unit for Wet and Marines Weapons Company. And I had, initially, there were only two other corpsmen that I was overseeing. But when I left, we had 8 corpsmen. So much bigger opportunity to learn how to lead.
Yeah.
During this time, I transitioned to the reserves, was with the Reserve Weapons Company, and finished up my degree. By that time, I'd gone up to be an E5, to where now I'm managing a lot more people, managing programs, starting to learn how to write policy. And then the Army is the only ones that offer a direct commission if you've got an acceptance letter to medical school. So then I transitioned to the Army National Guard. I always kind of joke that I have a problem keeping steady employment, but every one of the transitions that I've done have been done to either better my position or give me different advantages.
Right.
So I was a research chemist for a few years, like I said, before medical school. Transitioned to the Army National Guard. I ultimately became the battalion surgeon for a combat engineer unit. So there now, it's more, as far as military goes, more of a squadron command. So now I'm overseeing several different, they're smaller medical units, but 7 different medical units spread throughout the state of Ohio. So now I'm really learning how to manage people, manage programs, starting to write policy, and particularly at this level, trying to do that transition from being at the tactical level to being a little bit more at the strategic level. Where do we want to be at here in 5 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever that may be? So then transition that way. It gets a little bit more interesting. So in residency, I was chief resident, which probably wouldn't be surprising for most people who know me. So again, having had that experience, so, being able to manage people, being able to organize a schedule, because we made out the schedule, because, how many people have a easy time with learning schedules all of a sudden? Yeah, it's a chore. And then, realizing that you can't please everybody, but you try to please the maximum number of people that you can. And
I was
realize,
going to say, it's not just a schedule, it's all the people. And I was fascinated during residency. I remember one of the chief residents telling me that like someone literally wrote to me and complained that they worked more Wednesdays than somebody else. And I was like, hey, look, I'll make it easier for you. You put me on every holiday, every weekend, and I will never complain because my family knows I'm in
Hmm.
residency, I'm working, I'm getting as much experience as possible.
Yep. Like I said, had those kind of experiences. So now I'm also had to moonlight during residency because school laws were due.
Yeah.
Um, and the group that ER group that I was working with that was at our hospital, they ended up getting a contract for another hospital about 30 minutes north of there, and they were looking for needing a medical director. And they came to me and said, "Hey, have you found a job yet?" And I said, "No, being chief resident, my military time away, I've not really had much of a chance to look." And they said, "Well, we've got this new place up north here. We'd like you to be the medical director." And I'm like, "Wow, thank you very much. That's an honor, but I know there's other people that would really like this job." And they said, "No, we want you." Now, certainly I would not recommend the average person to go straight from residency being medical director. But the nice thing about it was I had all the military experience. Now, I got inundated by fire because I asked, "Well, what do I need to do?" Because I have no clue what a medical
Right.
director in an emergency room does. They said, "Well, just show up there. They'll tell you what you need to do." Okay. So I get
Managing
up there.
people again.
Yep. And I get up there. Not only am I medical director for the department there, I'm also the medical director for not one, but three ambulance companies. And
Wow.
trying to manage those personalities, which, three very strong personalities who, want their company to be the one always getting the best stuff. Yeah, it became a real chore. And it was kind of interesting. At this time, the Air Force was big into kind of going through things like statistical process control, making things right the first time, all that kind of stuff. But one of the classes that they had, which was probably the most valuable for me, was they taught you how to run a meeting. Um, and
Oh,
so,
wow.
you assign roles, you assign, somebody to keep an eye on the time. You have an agenda. When people put things on the agenda, they need to put down how much time they think, because meetings will start on time, they will end on time. When I first started with those ER or the ambulance directors, the meeting would be an hour. Then I would meet with the medics and stuff, do their education, that kind of stuff. And then they would meet again. And half the time they would make all the EMTs and paramedics and stuff wait for maybe another hour because they were still in their meeting. And I just never understood that. So I said, I listened to the first meeting. I just was a fly on the wall. The nurse had been running the meetings before I took over. I let him run that one. And the next meeting was a meeting on how we're going to run the meetings. But I have this issue. Well, then put it on the agenda for next month. Um, and it was interesting because we started on time, stopped on time. There actually were a couple months where we actually didn't have anything for the agenda, so we canceled the meeting. And the ambulance directors were ecstatic about the fact that they had a lot more of their time back.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that was a unique experience. And then when I left that facility, there was a nice three-ring binder, had job description for the medical director, had all the contact points, and it was all spelled out because that's what we do in the military. That's the way I was trained. So that's the way I left. So when whoever took over for me would go there and at least have a book on this is how you do things here. And feel free to use or not use, edit, add to, whatever. So like I said, I was quite fortunate to have had that experience.
I like that leadership sign out. Like that sounds very important. Because there's a lot of turnover in healthcare, whether it's your nursing administration, physicians, and to have leaders actually do a sign out, just like we would with patients in hospitalist. that we're handing over the most important things, I think is crucial. I've definitely tried that over the years when we've left an ER contract, and I'm always fascinated by the lack of interest from the next medical
Yeah.
director coming in. They're like, "No, I got this. All the hospitals are the same in the US. Like, I'll figure it out."
Well,
Okay.
you'll figure it out, but you certainly could make your life a little bit easier. I've already tried three things and it didn't work. There's no sense you trying them again. And that's always one of my biggest things. Why reinvent the wheel?
Right.
Take what you have and then evaluate it. That's the other thing that I've learned over the years. If you write a policy, don't just write the policy and just walk away from it. Revisit it in 1 month, 3 months, a year, whatever it is, and make sure the policy is doing what it is that you want it to do.
Right.
I think we fail on that last part. But if you go back and revisit it, if it's working, great. You don't have any more work. But if it's not working, fix it so it does work, so it does what it was intended to, and that'll get rid of a lot of the little irritants that people have when they're working. It's like, why are we doing this thing? It doesn't work. Well, let's figure out why it doesn't work and then make it work. And if you make
Yeah.
everybody else happy and don't have these little irritants, they're going to be happier. They're going to work better for you, and things are just going to run smoother.
It's actually a really good thing. It's a very positive thing to have a policy, because then there's consistency and it's clear communication. And this isn't just like administrator talk. This is, if you're strategizing for how to run things well, whether you're a medical director or a CMO or running the entire world like you do from your seat, policies are important to bring clarity and to communicate what needs to happen. And you go back and you fix things and you get everybody rowing in the same direction.
One of the things coming here to Korea, they strive very hard to have overlap between whoever's in the seat and whoever's taking over. There is a policy out there that my 3-star general put out that there'll be at least a week, if not longer, turnover, because it is very complicated, because it's not just working with U.S. forces, both Army as well as Air Force. It's also the Korean forces. So we do that little turnover. The person that was in the seat before me, he took it one step further, told my boss when I was at Air Mobility Command, where I was the chief of flight and operational medicine, he told her that I needed to come out for one of the exercises. So we do a couple very major exercises in which we're practicing what we need to do if something would happen. And it was an eye-opener for me to get that experience. And partway through, he needed to go do something else. And I was able, even after just a few days, to have an idea of what the requirements were for my job, what I needed to do, and how I needed to report to the 3 stars. And so it was really nice to have had that experience. And one of the things that I'm going to do, whoever's going to take over for me, I'm going to do that same recommendation. The other thing that I did recently was there was a course that was put on to where you learned more so how to be strategic with things. Rather than being tactical in the trenches, in the ER, taking care of the trauma. No, we're at the strategic level. It's more like, well, what are you going to do with that trauma once you've stabilized and they need to go somewhere else? And for us, where are we going to send patients? So I had the opportunity to do that course. And we had a senior mentor, another 3-star retired, that we could ask questions. And it was really nice because we also got the political view, because when you start getting at that level, there's a lot of politics when it comes to play. And even in hospitals, you've got that same kind of thing going on. And understanding the politics to go along with it and being able to navigate and finding how someone else navigated at least gives us some background that if we end up in a similar situation, well, this worked for them, let's give it a try, because I don't know what else to do because I've never done anything like this before.
That's really good. And when you finish out here, are you also going to be in like an advisory role where people can reach out to you, or?
I always offer that. And even to, I try to mentor a lot of the junior physicians here and anywhere. And I tell them at any point in time, you can pick up the phone and call me. I mean, I still get calls from other people that I've been commander of in the past. They'll call me on a regular basis and, you know, they'll let me know what's going on, what problems they're running into, or sometimes just say, hey, I was thinking about you. You know, wondering how things are going. But usually most of the time they've got an issue and they want to talk through it. And it's kind of anytime someone brings you a problem, biggest majority of the time, they don't necessarily want you to fix the problem. They just want you to listen. And that was a hard lesson for me to learn, was to just listen, not think 3 steps on how I'm going to solve your problem for you. Because usually most of us don't want that unless we specifically ask. But it's like when I have residents and medical students with me, if you let the patients talk long enough, they will tell you what's wrong. And a lot of times just being able to listen, reinforce things back to the person that you're actually truly listening, the biggest majority of the time, they come up with a solution themselves. They say, oh, I really helped them. It's like, no, I just listened. You figured out the problem.
Well, you're listening and you're asking really good questions. It's that core component of coaching that you believe that they can figure it out. Like you said so nonchalantly, well, of course they can figure it out. They have that. And it's that kind of view of other people. You value them highly. You know they're smart. You're there to listen and you ask questions and they figure out how to solve it. They learn more by doing it that way.
That's
Is that common in the military? Like to have
no.
commanders? No, yeah.
No. I couldn't tell you how many commanders over the years that just told me that I'm the commander going to do it this way. It's like, okay. Particularly the one commander, when I was in the reserves, I told him, I said, that's fine, but there is a cost to this. You've got to understand that. The cost, of course, is in your people. And he didn't understand that. Or when all the good people started leaving, going somewhere else, because when you're in the reserves, you can transition to another reserve unit pretty easy. I mean, you do need the commander saying that they will do that. But you know, all the good people started leaving. He didn't quite understand why. So I had a little mentorship with the commander and I said, this is why. This is because this is what your policy was. And this was the effect that it had on people.
It's interesting because I recently was listening to a Delta guy on a podcast talk about how you have to listen to your people on the ground. And that was one thing that he praised about Delta in general, was that they were built around that type of, like, the guys on the ground could always talk up to their commander and say, hey, this is why I don't think it's a great idea. It was open communication. They still would go and do the thing if they knew they had to, or they were given a direct command. But your leadership listening to the guys on the ground, to have boots on the ground, is crucial.
It is very crucial. But a caveat to that is that, particularly at the more strategic level, you're looking at a much larger picture. You may be doing that for a totally different reason than what they think they're doing yet. Unfortunately, even in my role, there's a lot of things that I can't tell you why you need to do it. Because admittedly, you know, in the ER and that kind of stuff, it's nice because I can tell you why I want to do it. You know, at this level and that kind of stuff, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that I just have to tell you, and you just have to trust me on that. But you build up that trust long before it gets to that situation, and people will do it. And again, it comes to looking out for people. And I don't know if this is a good time or not, but I think it's a nice segue into that book. It's Your Ship.
Love it. It's one of my favorite leadership books.
It is. And it's a very narrow book. And I gift that to a lot of the people that I mentor. I will gift that book to them. But it's basically a book about this lieutenant commander in the Navy that's going to take over a ship. And it starts out with him being there for the change of command ceremony, because that's always a big thing in the military is a change of command. There's a big tradition behind that and the reason why we do it, which is kind of neat, but that's another story. But I remember him hearing all the people saying, why are you here? I didn't think you liked this guy. I wanted to see him walking out the door. Okay. And when I took over command out at McCoy in Washington of the medical squadron out there, that was my same thoughts when I came in, is I didn't want to be that guy because the previous person left on not the best of terms. Like I said, I didn't want to be that guy either. And, he took over command, and I liked him there because this ship was dead last in all the scores on how the Navy rates the ships. And he basically started listening to people. And, he talked about listening to the trenches and that kind of stuff. I remember the one part of the book where one of the chiefs came over to him and said, sir, is there any way that we could change these bolts on the deck here from steel bolts to stainless steel? Because every time we go to port, we have to clean them off or repaint them because they start rusting. If we were to replace them with stainless steel, we wouldn't have to do that. And then that will make the people happier because all those people we'd have back for paint crew kind of stuff wouldn't get a chance to get liberty, go see whatever country they were at, a little piece of it, would be able to do that. And we actually would save money when you start looking at the cost of the people doing it, the cost of the paint every time they would go to pour. It made sense to replace them with the stainless steel bolts. And so he did that. He listened to the people, the fact that their food was lousy. We call it chow in the military. And he went down to the galley there and talked with the cooks and stuff, said, yeah, we get it from this one supplier and they're horrible. So the next time they went to their home port, he started asking around. He says, is there other suppliers? Well, the people that take care of that stuff says, yeah, you can get it from all these other vendors. And I said, well, let me look into this. He looked into it. He found a vendor that not only gave much better food, but is also cheaper. And of course, there are two things in the military you don't mess with: people's chow and their pay. You make sure they got good food and they enjoy it and eat it, they're going to be much happier. And the other part in that book that I liked too was there was one person there that he was a problem person. He apparently didn't like his job, but he let everybody know that he didn't like it. He was very caustic. Nobody liked to be around him. So he called him in the office one day and talked to him and says, why is it that you don't like your job? He says, because I don't believe you wake up in the morning every morning and decide, I'm going to see how I can make everybody's life miserable. And I truly believe that of 99% of the people that, they don't get up in the morning and try to see how they're going to mess things up. And he says, well, I really don't like this job, but I would really love if I could do this job. And that other job that he liked to do was one of the jobs that everybody hated. And so the commander's like, you'd be willing to do that job? Oh, yeah, I love doing that. He started doing that. He just excelled. So he found him a niche where he could do what it was that he liked. And now you've got rid of a problem person that you were spending a huge amount of time trying to take care of.
Listening to the patient again.
Yeah.
Like the more time you spend listening to the person, they're going to tell you the problem, and then you can go and fix it. And that's where we assume that we know what the problem is, or the leaders will sometimes come in and say, well, clearly it must be this. Check your attitude. Stop waking up and rolling off on the wrong side of the cot and coming out swinging all day long, and instead listening.
Well, that's with my leadership style. I let people know that they can say anything they want to me. I will not take any offense. And once they're done venting, because that's the other thing, when people are angry and that kind of stuff, they don't want to be rational, they're emotional. So I let them vent, and then we have the hard conversation. So what is bothering you? Why are you so upset? Why? And really get to that point. But initially you allow them to vent, because sometimes we just need to vent. But again, get them out of that emotional state to then allow them to accept input from a rational standpoint, they'll be much more receptive at that point in time. But like I say, you go in and say, hey, you got to change this and that. And, rather than just listen to them and try to, like I say, find out the underlying problem. I had a similar instance with one of my members where he didn't like his job either. And he did a lot of things that actually put a lot of people at risk. And I was ready to throw the entire book at him, court-martial him, initially take a strike from him, take some pay from him, do all this kind of stuff. But ended up, I also told him that you're going to be still working while we figure out what's going to happen to you here. And he ended up working as in the reception desk. And it was funny because I'm working all these other legal things. In the meantime, I'm getting all the other commanders on the base when I'd be at the wing meeting saying, hey, that guy you got working down there at the reception, man, he's amazing. He took care of this, took care of that. And so I called him up when we sat down, had a chat. And I said, when I told you what was going to happen, there were two ways that you could have taken it. Number one, you could have been caustic and bitter and made everybody's life miserable, but you decided not to do that. You embraced a new job. You did the best job that you possibly could and did it exceptional to the point where I had all these commanders telling me what a great job you did. I said, I'll tell you what, I'd be willing to go to bat for you and advocate for you to get a change of jobs. So you figure out what it is that you want to do in the meantime here. Now, there'll still be probably some legal repercussions or some of the other stuff, but I'm not going to try to fire you. I'm going to try to get you into a job where you can excel and continue to do well. And we actually got a value member back serving in the Air Force.
I love that. Like we've talked before about the whole finding those people that are maybe in the wrong position or have come into the current position by a strange pathway or a meandering path, like your own path through the military, and figuring out how we can go to bat for them and how we can find, just because they don't hit all of the check boxes that we thought they needed, sometimes those people are the most important people to have on the team. The teachable, coachable people that have enough humility to know they need to grow. I love that.
Yeah, I can always work with people that know that they need to learn, and more importantly, are willing to learn, rather than those folks that think that they know everything. And particularly like yourself and myself with our backgrounds, chances are we've probably been there, done that. And these folks that think that they can just be the know-all, get-all for everything, it's really kind of sad, because when things go awry, they're going to be the only ones left standing. Where, like for myself, I can ask people to come in off duty, weekends, and they would do it in a heartbeat for me. Because I look out for them. And that's the other part of that book too, is you take care of the people. And I've always believed this: if you take care of people, the mission will take care of itself. And a lot of times too, as a leader, you just need to get out of people's way, give them the tools they need to succeed. And they will surprise you on what they can do. And I just had this conversation with a patient here that probably did some things that he's going to get into trouble with here. And I told my kids this. I said, just remember that experience is making mistakes. Wisdom is not making the same mistake twice. And if you've done something, initially I'll give you the buy. If you've done something that's wrong and not what I wanted, I'm going to sit down and take the onus. I obviously didn't explain things well enough to you, didn't give you the tools you needed to succeed. That's on me. So tell me what you need. We'll see what we can do. We'll see what you can do to succeed. But now, if this happens a second time, it's on you.
Yeah, that's really good. That clarity around expectations. I know we had talked before too about having the crucial conversations, those hard conversations with people. Sometimes it is listening to them, and sometimes it's explaining to them where they need to be and explain when they see that gap. Like you say, you need to change your behavior or you're getting fired. And they're like, well, there's no way I'm jumping to that. Like, I can't be nice to people. It's not going to happen. And you're like, great, give me your resignation.
Yeah, and that's where it's, you've done that, I've done that. We always try to give people the benefit of the doubt. If there's something that they're lacking in, well, what can we do to help you?
Right.
So I transitioned now back to active duty. And of course, it's a big pay cut coming on active duty. So I was able to do some off-duty employment. And of course, they wanted me to be their interim medical director. It's like, guys, I've got a full-time job, and chances are, this is in August. I said, chances are in January, they're going to send me for a manning system, Minot, North Dakota. Okay. They're already forewarning me of that. But they go, you're the only one that's got any experience. We've got some issues. And well, you and I had this conversation earlier. I can't fix generalities. I can fix specifics. So give me what it is that you don't like, or what it is that needs to get fixed, and I can work on that. And had an instance of one of the persons there that he had some issues. So I talked with him, and I started out being more the mentorship kind of thing, and what can we do to help you to succeed, and gave him specific examples of what his behavior was and why the people didn't appreciate that behavior. And at the end of the day, he wasn't willing to try to change, and he ended up leaving. But again, it was probably better for the staff. There was another situation too where I had that conversation with the person where all the nurses were going to leave, and I had the CEO called me into his office and explained this to me, and I had to have that hard conversation with them that, hey, everyone here, every nurse in this department is going to leave because of the way that you treat them. Gave him specific examples of what he did, wasn't willing to change his behavior whatsoever, and I gave him the ultimatum. I said, which do you think is going to be easier to replace? You? Oh, it'd be hard to replace me. I said, but you didn't let me finish. Or to replace 20 nurses in the ER. And oh, by the way, what do you think the CEO is going to think on having to replace his entire nursing staff in the emergency room, and maybe even having to close things down because there's no staff to cover the emergency room?
Not a good look at all for the group.
Not at all. And he didn't wish to change his behavior. He says, well, then I guess I'm going to have to leave. And I said, yes, I guess you're going to have to leave. And it's hard to have those conversations, but I've had a couple of people tell me that I enjoy conflict. Okay. I'll let you know, I hate conflict just as much as everyone else. I abhor it. I would avoid it if I can, but unfortunately, somebody at some point in time has to have that conflict resolved, and you have to go through it. And I've learned over the years in the military kind of thing that, you have to do that. And if it has to be me to do it, well, then so be it, because I'm in that role.
Right.
As medical director, sometimes you have to have those hard conversations.
Yeah, I agree. I also dislike conflict, but what I dislike more is not having good chow for your people. So knowing that you have one toxic person there causing problems or an issue that does require you to talk with administration or to argue in med staff about a policy, but in the end, you're going for something that's making everyone else's life better. And that's what I can focus on. It's not that one-on-one. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt as I walk in and not trying to challenge their humanity, but wanting to fix things for the rest of the people.
Yeah, it's probably a much better way to make things better. And I know in myself, another situation where I was advocating for the very young captain flight surgeons, and I was taking the heat from the 4-star in order to protect them, and could have gotten me into a lot of trouble. Fortunately for me, eventually, that person saw the light and realized that I was correct and backed off on what he was doing. Um, but again, somebody had to advocate for those younger staff, or even like in the emergency room for the nursing staff. Somebody's got to also be their advocate.
I mean, that segues a little bit into something we had talked about before about how, as a leader, and you're highly decorated, highly awarded for all of the things that you've done, but you've never pushed anyone out of the way to get there. And again, your staff love you for that. They see that you're willing to take the heat and never take credit that doesn't belong to you. And that makes them loyal. And that's like the great leadership skill that's crucial, is that humility. It's not just listening to your people, but it's being willing to do the right thing and for the right reasons, and not for your own military career, politics, etc.
I firmly believe that if something good happens, I give the credit to the people that did the work. If something bad happens, then that's on me. I will take that heat. And particularly in my position now, getting very close to retirement, you can bring all the heat you want. It's probably not going to bother me too much. But even earlier on in my career, I always believed that. I let the people go accept the awards. They got the picture with the generals and that kind of stuff. It wasn't me. They did the lion's share of the work. I just guided them and helped kind of draft whatever thing you're working on, help them to draft it to make it better. And ultimately, like I said, they were the ones that accepted the awards. I didn't. That didn't mean that at some point in time down the road, I didn't get rewarded for that. I did. But I never sought out that reward. It was other people that put those awards in for me. Biggest majority of my medals, I have not written them. Someone else has written them for me. That's one of the things, particularly with our evaluations and medals. Typically, we tend to write them, give them to the generals, and have them sign off on it. But I didn't do that. I had other people felt that it was the right thing to do. I never asked for one, never sought for it, but it will eventually come your way. It really will.
Where did you learn that? Like, you said that's not super common in the military, to be the kind of leader that listens to the people, even though you have these great books like It's Your Ship. Did you learn that at some point from a different mentor, or did it come naturally to you? Because you said you learned all your leadership, but you sound like a natural leader.
It probably stems from one of the commanders that I had when I was with the reserves, where his leadership style was that of being antagonistic, where he would pit different people, different sections against one another to try to help facilitate them to come up with a product. And, that is a style of leadership that you can do, and it will get you a decent product, but it's at the expense of the people. So, and we would come up with something that, won Air Force level awards and that kind of stuff. I think that's probably part of the reason why I had the people that did the lion's share of the work for it, the junior people accept the award. So that way, then the commander would see that it's not me that's doing it. It's all these other people that maybe he could take a lesson and learn to try to change his leadership style. He eventually ended up retiring shortly after all of this. But like I said, I think that's maybe where that came from. Because you really should never ever pit two different groups against one another, because that was what I would always do. I would find out, I'd go over to the other group and said, hey, this is what he told me. Oh, we never told him that. So then we actually would work collaborative, which that's the other thing that I learned a long time ago, that if you could be more collaborative in your leadership style, then number one, you'll end up with a better product. Number two, you'll end up with people having more of a buy-in. Now, again, that's not to say in my roles and that kind of stuff, and particularly with the Marines, there's times where, if you're caught in an ambush, you have to turn in the direction of fire and charge. So that's what the gunnery sergeant is going to yell to you, and you just have to turn and do it. Like I said, there are some times that you have to do that, but the biggest majority of the time, if you can be more collaborative in decision making. So in the military, one of the things we do is we have people come up with different courses of action. And I stress this, when you come to me as a commander with a problem, I'm going to ask you, what do you want to do about it? So your job is to come to me with 2 or 3, preferably 3 courses of action on what you think I should do. And I may decide on one of those. I may send you back and have you do something else, which I've been in that situation before. I had to go back, come up with other options. Or I may propose a 4th option, which may be combining 2 of the options. And, you end up with a much better product. You can get the buy-in.
Right.
Those programs will succeed then because of that, and will stay in place long after you leave. It's funny, when I first took over in the reserves, I got assigned the credentialing of providers for the reserves. We were due to have an inspection the next week, right? I knew nothing about this program. So go through this inspection and they're like, oh, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. Here's what it says in the regulation. And so we failed miserable, okay? This is something that can get a commander and myself fired, kind of thing. But we had 3 months to come up with a new program. So I came up with a new program. Number one, I got into the regulations and read up on what I had to do, okay? That's the other thing. If you take over as medical director, make sure you read all the policies. Even when I change different hospitals, I look at their bylaws. I read them all. I may not read every letter, but I read the majority of it, so I know, where things should be coming from. And I came up with a policy, a program that actually turned out to be a model program for the entire Air Force Reserves. And when I came back on active duty, 20 years later, a lot of the forms and the general format of that program was still in use. So it will probably still long outlive me when I leave the military.
It's amazing. I love that. It's just when you work hard to make something and it's not just throwing it together, but you're doing it step by step, reading the regulations, what's required, and using your team.
Yep.
And you can create something long lasting.
Yeah, it did require collaboration with the active duty credentialing monitor, the attorneys. I spoke with them about what kind of consequences can happen if this kind of stuff doesn't occur in a timely manner. And so I understood all the ins and outs before writing that policy. And like I said, came up with something that was very effective. But again, when it came time to accept that award, an Air Force level award, I sent the enlisted person that was, going to ultimately at the end of the day, be the one to do all the day-to-day grunt work. I sent her to go accept that award. I didn't accept it. And she was tickled to death. And when you mentioned about loyalty, yeah, she and I kept in contact for even long after she retired. And then when I was on active duty at Wright Pat, turned out she left the reserves, got a civilian job doing the same thing in credentialing that she did in the reserves. And it was because of all of that she then ended up getting a second job after she retired. And we got to meet up again when I got back on active duty.
You've done a lot of different education between your residency and then going back and doing occupational medicine residency and getting a MPH. One of the ones I'm curious about is your CPE, or the Certified Physician Executive. I've started to do some of that work, and just curious what you thought. When did you do that in your career? Like how you've been a leader the whole time.
So that was actually one of the things that we had the opportunity to do when I was going through the aerospace medicine residency.
Okay.
So we had that opportunity. It is interesting in regards to being a leader or trying to get a leadership position. If you happen to be fortunate, the people know you. That's how I got my first job as medical director. They knew me. They saw what kind of work I did. They saw the interaction I had with the other residents. I sat on a lot of the committees as the chief resident. So they saw me at those committee level meetings and interactions that way. So that's how I got my first job. So that then once I got that first job, now I got that box check that I've been a medical director. So that makes it easy. But if you don't have that type of opportunity, you really need to get something that lets people know that you are able to be a leader. And that's where like the CPE, MBA kind of thing comes into play. I like the CPE better than the MBA because I think it's a little bit more tailored to physicians. Because we have a little unique background as far as our training and experience. And it is interesting in the military, if you've got an MPH, all those courses that you did, I get credit because not only because of the MPH, but also the other leadership courses that I'm required to do in order to get promoted. So there's Squadron Officer School, which is the first leadership course, and now everybody has to do in residence. I did it back in the day when that wasn't the thing. I did it in residence, had the opportunity. Air Command and Staff College, which again is next level up to go from captain to major, and then Air War College that then takes you from lieutenant colonel to colonel. So as you're going up the hierarchy of these courses, you're also learning to go from the tactical level to more the strategic level. The CPE course lets people know that you're able to think in that kind of level, that you're able to be more strategic rather than tactical. And it allows you the opportunity to let people know that I can be a leader. You just got to give me the opportunity. And if you've got two people with the same kind of background, same experience, and one has a CPE and one doesn't, most places are going to take the person that's got the CPE. And it was kind of interesting that place that we were working at in Illinois. I actually met with the CEO because, again, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do when I grow up, when I go to retire. And I have been toying with the possibility of being a CEO. And so I met with her, gave her my CV, and we sat down and had a chat. And I said, ma'am, I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you. What do you think my chances are of being a CEO is? And she looked at me and says, you know, McCoy, she goes, you're more qualified for this position than I am. So again, it's another one of those things. And that's the other part too, is look for opportunities to mentor. You know, something I kind of toyed around with, you know, whether I'd actually truly be successful or not, I don't know. But somebody that's actually sitting in the seat, I picked her brain for a little bit on, you know, number one, finding out a little bit more about the job and what it takes, and then whether or not I would be competitive at a job like that. And again, having that CPE is a great thing. I mentor a lot of the physicians in the military because that actually is a course the military will send a few selected individuals to every year. And I tell people that that's something that they're looking at trying to get into command, to become a leader. That's definitely a course that they should be taking. And I get no compensation from the people there.
It would be wonderful to have more physicians in that CEO position. The CEO that you're talking about, again, is one of those, you know, underdog kind of stories. Somebody that's passionate about their community to the point that they're working up and like the last person at the table frequently, willing to do the things, willing to take the reins when no one else is there. And truly caring about the people in the hospital, the people in the community, and the board rewards that.
Hmm.
I think there are a lot of positions where physicians think they couldn't get to that point, but if we don't, they're all going to sell to private equity, and
That's correct.
we're going to be stuck doing things that we're frustrated with, and system that focuses on the money, the pennies. Going back to the it's your ship example, it would be the commander deciding to ship in chow from Venezuela because it saves a couple cents per plate or something. And
Hmm. I've had a few leaders that I valued. One of them in particular, he actually was a CEO of a hospital. And one of the exercises that we were doing, one of the readiness exercises, and we're playing that going to war, but he's also got his full-time job to help run the hospital. And I took that opportunity to talk with him and find out a little bit more about his job, what he was doing. And he was great because he took the time, showed me, on the program, here's revenue sources coming in, expenses going out, and ran through that. He then ultimately became the CEO of the big conglomerate that he was a part of. Ended up
wow,
making general himself. But he was one of those people, too, that really, truly looked out for people. And even like myself, he looked out for me, knowing that I needed some mentorship on how to get to the next level. And he took that time. And like I said, so the unit itself was highly successful. And because of that, then, of course, that made him highly successful.
I think it goes back to this discussion we had before about leaders and what they do, whether it's cleaning out refrigerators, mopping the floor, picking up the trash in their facility, caring directly for your EVS staff, your registration, that humility, and that going back to the CEO that wants the best for their small town community and is willing to
Mm-hmm.
do all the things, the difficult things, the crucial conversations, or the other things that are not as pleasant to do. Sometimes we get this view of leadership as this high position where you only tell people what to do, you make grand strategic decisions. And it's really more about serving people, listening to them, and that collaboration that you've been talking about.
Again, when I was at McCoy, we were having some contract issues with getting something simple as mowing the grass. We were a tenant unit on that base with the reduction of bases. The Air Force wing then actually fell under the Army there at Camp Lewis. So we, in order to get contracts done, had to go through the Army. We had a little extra money. We bought a zero radius turn lawnmower, which we found we could do legally because made sure I didn't want to go to jail for purchasing something we weren't allowed. But there were quite a few times when I'd be out riding that lawnmower, mowing the grass because it needed to be done. Of course, what I didn't tell the staff was I had a blast driving that thing around.
I bet. Yes.
But they saw that I wasn't afraid to get my hands dirty and do what needed to be done. And that's when they realized that, hey, I need to get my hands dirty sometimes too. And I took a unit that cruiser in that book that the morale was horrible. It was totally dysfunctional to making it one of the more highly decorated, award-winning units in the Air Force. And we're competing, our little 80-member unit competing against bases where they've got 3,000 people. And we're winning the awards. They are not. It's because of taking care of people and showing them that you truly care, because it's not just giving them lip service. It's actually
Right.
doing that. It's telling people to go home. Do not stay here as late as I stay. I like to walk around and talk to people. And that takes me away from doing my job. But I think that's important too, to get to know the people. But like I say, it's just so important that they see that you're willing to put your words into action and do that for them. And that was the other thing, and getting to know the people there at that base. When it came time to get recommendations from the wing level, which in the medical community, competing against the wing and getting a stratification from the wing is huge for our getting a course we want to get into, more importantly, getting promoted. I was able to get just about everybody a decent strat to where when it came, their packet went up for promotion, they all got promoted. But that's because I got to know the people. And again, not just give them lip service, but actually be willing to do some of the work for them.
You brought up a good point. Like you said that walking around and talking with people took you away from work, but you were doing the work that was the most important, getting to know your people, their needs, what's going on, what their frustrations are. And if that's not built into your leadership position, so as a commander, chief medical officer, or system physician, making sure that your directors, part of their job description, their day-to-day tasks has to be going out and knowing your people and making sure that's built in. The most successful CEOs that I've seen are the ones that don't just do the consultant recommended checkbox rounds in the ER where they stop by, they awkwardly say hi and buzz through, and papers kind of drift a little bit because it was so fast. But they come and they sit down, they pull up a chair, they're asking everybody what's going on, what are the problems. Okay, if I sit down here and work for a little while, does that buzzer always go off all the time? Or what's that gunshot sound? Oh, that's just the door opening that we've been asking for you guys to change that automatic door from the gunshot sound. And they're like, oh, yeah, when you sit here and it's really quiet at night, I bet that's pretty disturbing. Yes, it is. But you don't gain that if you're not in there as a leader. And as a leader, making sure your managers, your other directors are doing those things.
There was one person that I know of that when he would walk around, people would hide under their desk. I had one of my execs that the only time people ever saw him was when they were in trouble. So, and getting back to that one leader that led by being antagonistic, I'll never forget the quote. It always bothered me because I'd have it always fix the messes that he would make, because people would come to me with their problem. There was a quote by Colin Powell that said, when people stop bringing you their problems, you have stopped leading. And that really made me feel much better about, okay, they're bringing the problems to me. And I actually got into that conversation one time when that caustic commander said that my attitude was pulling down the morale of the entire unit. And I said, if that's doing that, then really, who is in charge here? I mean, he just got deadly silent and realized that, I think he finally realized all the work that I was doing, trying to keep this unit up and running, despite all the problems he put in the way. And I think that's one of the reasons that he ended up ultimately retiring then. So like I said, when people stop bringing you their problems, you have stopped leading. So I always had an open door policy, and I always kept my door open. Very suddenly, unless I was having, conversations with people that, didn't need other people hearing, but my door was always open. I went back to that unit. And of course, I walked through the command suite, everybody was happy to see me and that kind of stuff. The commander there, his door was partially closed. It's like, I didn't quite understand that. My door was either closed or open. So at that halfway, what kind of message are you sending people? Okay, right. It's open, but I'm too busy to really do that. And like I said, when you get to know people, I saw one of the other members of the unit, and I've got a pretty good memory. I can remember what people look like and that kind of stuff. I'm real good with faces and what you tell me, except for your name. That's one of my problems. When I took over command at night, I would go down to the offices and I'd stand outside trying to memorize everybody's names. because I know that's one of my weaknesses, so that I could call people by their name. But I saw her and she didn't look right. So I pulled her aside and I said, "It's wrong." And she broke down and started crying and telling me what was going on and that kind of stuff. So I walked her up to behavioral health there, got her an intake with one of the people there. We got her some help. But it was because I knew my people. And so even a year later, I could go back there and make a huge impact on somebody just because I got to know them and realize that they weren't their normal self. I may not know what's going on, but I know you're not your normal self.
A true leader who knows their people, being able to see that. And you won't get that in just your fast drive-bys. You have to spend time with them.
And I like your comment that you made about sitting down and working. Take a few minutes, sit down there and actually see what the department's going by. And I know in several of the hospitals that I've worked at, you ask the people in the ER there if they know who the CEO is. Biggest majority of times, they don't even know who he is or she is. There at that one place, I mean, I think everybody knew her because she took the time to get down in there and talk to people. And came in on the holiday. I think one time she brought in some food for us, which was great. Like I said, that it takes really very little effort, but you still have to make that little effort.
One of the things I've seen is that sometimes as you go up into a more strategic position and you have more titles or a different title that's a more strategic title, that people do tend to assume you're busy and take fewer of their problems to you. So how do you overcome that as chief of chief and commanding? How do you let people know that your door is still open?
It's kind of interesting because you're right. And being a colonel, that's extremely intimidating to most people. Typically, we're all very busy, but I do listen. I will hear when people have problems. And really, for me, what started it all was somebody here was having an issue and had me look into his care. And he needed to get a specific referral and to get some serious medical care. He called me up and said, "Hey, they're telling me it's going to be a couple of days, but I don't think I don't want to wait that long. Okay. Because this could be something bad. I want to find out now." I said, "Well, give me a second." And I just took a few minutes. I put the appropriate referrals in. I did the extra. I went over to the clinic there to the referral managers. And I said, "Let's get on the phone. Let's call the hospital. Let's talk to the referral center there," because they have an English-speaking center there. And I got him in to see the specialist within a day and a half, getting the referral started and that kind of stuff. And so, like I said, because it was the right thing to do, okay?
Right.
And fortunately with that, now the word of mouth has gotten around. So now the 4-star or 3-star will have me look into situations for him and other people coming over. They've got these issues and that kind of stuff. So now word of mouth's gotten around that they will typically go to their commander. Their commander will come to me, and then I will go to that person, and I will help work on the problem with them. So,
but you're doing things as a leader. So it's often the frustration is that you'll bring something to a leader, and they're like, "Oh, I hear you. I'll look into it." And a year later, the next person comes into the position, and you're like, "Was any headway made on this?" But you actually attempt to get something done. You're letting them know that you are. That action is crucial.
And I think the other part of that too is I communicate that.
Right.
So I'll talk with the person, and it may just be via email, but when I engage with the other people that I know, let's say like Japan or back at Hickam in Hawaii with Pacific Command, I don't tell them I don't give them a copy of the email. I don't just copy the email because I would rather than know that I'm working on it. They don't need to know all the specifics that I talk to them about because, again, I may know that it's not going to happen. But I let them know that I've talked with them. They're looking into it. When they come up with a decision or something like that, they'll let me know. And then when I get that decision, then as soon as I get that decision, I really try my best to turn that around and let the person know. So keeping that communication open, and then again, closing it once you do one step, let them know that you've done it, let them know what the next step is. And then again, when that loop is been completed, completing with the person, and then continue on the next step if there is a next step.
It's been amazing to hear all of these things. Just this is exactly what I wanted, was to be able to talk to you and hear tons of wisdom and advice. And I have a feeling that we've only scratched the surface. But thank you so much for talking today.
Well, thank you.
I really enjoyed this leadership discussion and our time together.
Agreed. It's been a pleasure.
So thank you all for joining us today, and welcome to Medicine and our talk with Dr. McCoy. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe. Please feel free to continue to send us any questions, comments, or ideas. Thank you.